To Uganda now, and the death toll from a landslide there has climbed to at least 15 people. Scores remain missing after flooding and a landslide in Bundi-bujyo district on Tuesday morning. According to authorities, 50 people are currently undergoing treatment at a local hospital. The slides come amid prolonged heavy rain that started Monday night. Bridges were washed away and some 200 homes destroyed in heavy rains that have cut off access to some areas. Well, now let's get you an update on that story. I'm joined live from Kampala by CCTV's Isabel Nakiria. Isabel, what's the latest on the rescue efforts following that landslide in Uganda?
Well, we are receiving reports from Western Uganda that are a bit disturbing. After the 200 homes that were washed away, we are being told that the disaster ministry officials have not yet appeared on the ground. So many of the people who are homeless are now staying with friends, and there's no food, no water, no social services for them because many of the roads have been washed away and the bridges have been cut off. So the only people on the ground are the Red Cross officials who are just carrying out assessments of what is actually needed for these people. So no camps have been set up by the government, and people are living with friends. So we have about, the death toll still stands at about 14, 15. Those are the reports we are receiving. And homeless are about 200 people. No social services on the ground as yet.
And Isabel, what is happening around the Mount Elgon region? It is, of course, notorious for its landslides, which have killed hundreds of people over the years. Can you give us an update?
The Mount Elgon region is similar, very similar to the Mount Rwenzori area in Western Uganda. This is an area that has got very soft soils, and environmentalists have in the recent past noticed very fresh cracks on the mountains, and they feel that these cracks are signs that another landslide could occur any time. So many of the people who are living here were told to relocate to safer areas, but because they are attached to this area, many have still stayed there. The last landslide that occurred was in 2010, and 200 lives were lost. So officials do not want a similar occurrence to occur again, but because many people do not want to relocate, the area still stands at risk. So the few who relocated were taken to safer places, but many people are still there, and the fresh cracks are a sign that a landslide could occur any time.
Isabel, thank you very much for that update. That was CCTV's Isabel Nakiria joining us from our studios in Kampala, Uganda. Well, now CCTV's Soni Methu has been closely following developments and disasters in East Africa. She joins me now live in studio. Soni, can you just run us through some of the most recent flooding and disasters happening in the East African region?
Well, as you've heard from Rwanda and Uganda, at least 50 people died in Rwanda, 15 in Uganda, and just in the past 2 days, another 50 people died in Ethiopia. And in the past week, you heard about Huruma here in Nairobi, where at least 51 people died after a building collapsed. And Red Cross estimates that since the rain started in Kenya, at least 100 people have died. So from those numbers already, just these past few days, we have at least 215 people dead. In those incidents, there are people still missing, people have been displaced. There are people in high-risk areas that haven't been moved, and if the rains continue, we fear that these numbers could actually rise.
Now, of course, Soni, these rains come every year, as do these disasters. Why isn't more being done to prevent them, and what are the challenges in doing so?
Well, a lot can be attributed to that, but according to the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs for the UN, they say that funding is an issue. Of at least $10.4 billion appealed for, only 10% has been financed. Of course, there are issues of corruption, where buildings like the one that collapsed in Huruma was illegal. There's poverty, where people like in Ethiopia, at least 10 million people are now in need of dire assistance, especially for food. And the extent of this damage, the weather has been unpredictable, but also it's quite unpredictable to imagine the extent that these rains would cause. These are some of the reasons given.
And talking about the weather, is there an end in sight? When can we expect the rains to come to an end in East Africa?
Well, according to global climate patterns, they are saying now that the El Nino event is weakening. But as this weakens, the impact or the effect of the rains are now starting to be felt. The food shortage will be bigger. The people required to get humanitarian aid will be many, and we expect that a lot needs to be done if these disasters are going to direct at least the preparedness for East Africa for these natural disasters as climate patterns continue to affect people all over the globe.
Sonny, thank you very much for those updates. CCTV's Sonny Methu joining me live here in studio, talking to us about the recent heavy rains occurring all over East Africa.